Alright students, hello. This is my next video for our kind of introductory videos in week 1. And so this one's all about the textbook. So let's get right into it. Your textbook, number 1, your textbook, you got to make sure you get the right one. The textbook looks like this. So you have to have the 9th edition. Okay, got to make sure it says 9th edition and it looks like this. Okay, if it doesn't look like this, then you probably got the wrong book. So you got to make sure that it looks like that. Now once you turn inside there, you will see, of course, some of the normal introductory stuff there and everything, right? So what I want to get to is I want to get to the Roman numeral pages here that you have to really look at. This is some of the stuff that you're going to be looking at and trying to understand in week 1. And it actually will be part of your week 2 discussion. So you really want to make sure you go through and read all of these things, or at least skim through and look for the important stuff, right, as you go through this. So notice the first major thing you want to make sure you know about and understand is the goals. There are 4 course goals. And I'm not going to talk about them here much, other than just to tell you that they are about rhetorical knowledge. You're going to learn. You've probably, hopefully, already learned a lot about rhetoric. If you took 101, especially here at WVU, you should have learned about rhetoric. So you're going to talk about. So one of your goals is going to be demonstrating your understanding and knowledge of rhetoric and how to apply it. You're going to talk about your processes for researching and writing as a process. You're going to demonstrate your thinking, your critical thinking through exploration and evaluation. And finally, you're going to demonstrate your knowledge of writing conventions. Okay? So those are your goals. You want to make sure you kind of understand them and be able to think about them logically and seriously throughout the semester. Okay? Now, this is basically an overview of the kinds of assignments you're going to have. That's page 10. Now, this is going to be especially something that you definitely want to take a look at and understand, and that is your rubrics. These are the major rubrics and descriptors for the different types of grading that we do here at WVU. So grading is divided into 3 parts. First part is your lowest amount. It's 10% of the overall 100% final grade. So 10% of that grade has to do with your participation. And with an online class, that's just basically doing the work that you're supposed to do in a timely fashion. In other words, turning everything in when it's due, doing work every week to show that you are actively involved, and all that stuff will come out and will lend itself toward this grade, whether it's excellent, solid, competent, or whatever. You can kind of look at those as excellent being A, B, C, D, barely passing, and then unacceptable being F. So you can kind of equate it that way if you want to. But that's only 10% of your overall grade. Now, the 20% of your overall grade will be what we call writing exercises. Now, I do a little bit more than just the exercises for this. This is 20% of your final grade. And everything that you turn in, everything that you submit and are required to do for the course is part of this 20%. It's also a little bit of the 10%, because if you're doing the work you're supposed to do for the exercise, for the actual work you're supposed to that you're assigned, then you're also participating, right? So the 10% participation and the 20% writing exercises and turning work in on time, those kind of go together. They work together. Okay. Now the last part, the biggest part, is your portfolio. At the very end of the semester, you will have a portfolio that you'll have to create by assembling a lot of the work that you've done throughout the term. So pretty much everything you do in this class, make sure you save it. I would suggest just creating a folder maybe somewhere and just call that folder English 102 and just save everything there so that you'll have everything you need for your final portfolio. The portfolio is worth 70 points, so it's the vast majority of your grade, right? And then if you look on the next page, you'll see a breakdown, and this breakdown is a very detailed breakdown of what all goes into that final portfolio as far as like what we'll look at to grade it. Again, it's excellent, A, B, C, D, and F, right? You can kind of see those together, those kind of D or F as if you're down here in the barely passing. So this breaks down to different things. It breaks down to your elements of reflective thinking. It breaks down into your attention to rhetorical situation. And then a couple of other, next page shows a couple more things that it's broken down into. So this is a pretty extensive breakdown of that grade. Sources and evidence, in other words, shows that you use sources to provide evidence for your arguments in your research paper and in your editorial at the end. And then your use of conventions and craft, in other words, how well you write it and how well you use the conventions of proper writing, like in a research paper versus an argument, right? So those are all the important things that you need to make sure you understand when it comes to the grading. And then, of course, there's the course policies here. It tells you about how the attendance and engagement works. Basically, since you're on an online class, the engagement is what you'll be particularly paying attention to, because there's no really a real attendance in an online class. It's just a matter of engaging in the work every week. If you go more than 2 weeks of online class, in other words, and if you go 2 full weeks without doing anything and online, without turning anything in or doing anything that gives you participation or whatever, then you can be dropped from the class. 2 to 3 weeks is basically how much time that amounts to. And so it says, like it says here, students who miss a total of 3 or more weeks of class will earn a failing grade. So if you miss a couple weeks, that's going to hurt you. But if you miss 3 weeks in a row, you're taking the chance of being dropped from the class right then, actually failing the class. So in other words, you got to make sure you participate. You've got to turn stuff in every week so that you show you're participating and show that you're actually being present, so to speak, as an online student. Okay? Read all that. Make sure you understand all that. If you have questions about any of this stuff, you should jot them down, because you will be talking about all this stuff in your discussion for week 2. All right? More information here about absences and attendance and stuff like that, right? So go through all this stuff. Make sure you understand it all. The academic dishonesty and plagiarism. Just don't do it. Okay? Just don't take a chance. This is the information about the writing studio. So if you would need help, and I tell all my students, I highly suggest that you take advantage of this, especially for the projects. When you're writing your projects, maybe after you're done writing a first draft, show it to the tutor and see if they can give you some help with it, to make sure you've done a good job with it. Because your students, these tutors are students who have done this class. They've taken this class. They know what you're facing, and they know what you're supposed to be doing, so they can give you good feedback about how to do a good job with this stuff. So you want to make sure that you do that. And you can do either on person. If you live here in Morgantown, you could go to room G02 of Colson Hall, which is it's kind of not across the street from, it's sort of across the street from the library, the downtown library, or not the downtown library, I'm sorry, the library up there by the college library. So you got the mountain layer, and then beside the mountain layer, there's a mountain layer, and then beside the mountain layer, there's the, I'm trying to show you in the right way, but I can't do it because of this. Anyway, there's the mountain layer, and then right to the left of the mountain layer, right beside the mountain layer, there is the library. And then across from the library, across the street from the library, is Colson Hall. So you can go there to see somebody in person, or you can do online tutoring and have somebody help you online. Either way, I highly suggest that you take advantage of that, because they can really help you. Now, that brings us to Chapter 1. Chapter 1 is the first thing that you'll be needing to read and understand for week 1 and week 2. And again, that would be part of the discussion that you'll be doing in week 2. So you want to make sure you read chapter 1 along with all that Roman numeral stuff, and that will prepare you for what we're going to be doing in week 2. And that, just remember that all of this stuff, this is not that many pages long, but it's it's a few pages long. But let me show you something that you need to. Okay, sorry about that. I thought I was missing something. I thought that something was interfering with my recording. Oh, all right. Anyway, so go ahead and just make sure you understand all this stuff, and that way you'll be ready for week 1 and week 2. And just remember that the textbook is very important. You have to do the work in it. Also, I should mention that there's something called miscellaneous items. Miscellaneous items, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown. I'll talk about them more later, maybe in another video. But miscellaneous items are things that you have to do to show your work beyond what you're required to do in the class. So you'll have assignments and stuff that you'll have to do, but you'll also be required to have, by the time we get to the end of the 16-week semester, you'll have to have at least 7 assignments that you have worked on and done on your own. In other words, I didn't assign them to you or anything. You just chose to work on those assignments to help you do whatever it is you're working on in a given week. Okay? So, for example, your first miscellaneous item would be what you would work on that would be related to chapter 1. They're usually lined up with the chapters of the book. So chapter 1 is just this introductory stuff, and you will be asked to do a miscellaneous item for that. Now, those miscellaneous items can actually be activities in the textbook that we don't use as a class. Okay? So if like sometimes we'll use activities in the textbook that we'll do together, and you can't use those. But there's other things that you can do that you can use. See, this tells you more about how PACT works. You'll learn more about what that means. If you've already been in 101 at WVU, you should already know all about PACT. Now, here's a writing activity, right? How to choose your research topic. This would be one, for example, that you could do as a miscellaneous item for this first chapter. Okay? Miscellaneous items are just basically anything that you do to help yourself that are not required, that I don't tell you have to do. So it could be activities from the textbook that we don't actually use in the course. It could be proof of having had a tutor help you. It could be note-taking that you do. Maybe if you watch a video and you take some notes on it, you could submit that. You don't have to submit it until the end, but you could save those notes, and that could be one of your miscellaneous items. So it can be just about anything. If you're thinking about something that you want to maybe put and you're not sure or use as a miscellaneous item, but you're not sure if you could use it or not, get by with using it or not, just ask. Let me know what it is, and I'll tell you if you can use it. Great. If you can't, you'll just find something else. All right. So that's pretty much it for this video. You'll learn more about some of this stuff as we go along, but that'll do it for now. If you have questions, please ask. Okay? That'll do it for this video.